And he might be hurt. Randy trying to close in though now. And he goes down. He's down. And Chuck Liddell.
Oh, he is
the
out.
new light heavyweight champion of the world.
What's going on, ladies and gentlemen? It's your boy, it's Jay Pucci. We're back with an all-new 3 rounds with Jay. Shit, I've never said it that way before. We may keep it. Anyways, we're back with an all-new 3 rounds with Jay. It is officially Tuesday. We are in 2019, and my goodness, it is already January 8th. The time is flying by sooner than you know it. It may be December 31st, and fuck, we'll be heading to 2020. We should slow up. I'm not ready for 2020. Let's slow our horses. There's a lot of big things we got to get through, whether it be in your life or whether it be the New Year's resolution or that 6-pack of abs you've been trying to get for the last 10 years. One of the two may happen first. Either A, you're gonna get your New Year's resolution down this year and might actually accomplish it, or B, you may get a 6-pack of abs. I'm leaning towards neither of them happen, but hey, to each his own. This shit happens. That's what we're here for, and that, my friends, is to discuss mixed martial arts. This is 3 rounds with Jay. Whether you end up getting the 6-pack, 7-pack, 8-pack, or just a flab, I really don't care. Just as long as you're enjoying yourself, that's what's important at the end of the day. So, we've got a 3 rounds with Jay. I know we got no matchups coming up this week. We've got no major events until January 19th, where the UFC will be live on ESPN+. We don't even have a Bellator event until January the 26th. We don't even have a Pro Fight League event until their 2nd season. One Championship is on a little bit of a hiatus for a bit. They'll be coming back around the end of January, so expect them to have an event. But outside of the smaller organizations, there's truly nothing big on the horizon right now until January the 19th. So what we're going to do with today's episode is we're going to discuss a little bit about some upcoming matchups. I'm going to discuss one potential one that was just recently announced today, which is, once again, as always, it is Sunday. This is being filmed. This will be presented to you all live. Not live, but this will be presented to you all on Tuesday, the 8th of January, 2019. So some news that came out this week, some news that came out today to be specific. Jon Jones taking on Anthony Smith. So that's going to be one of the discussions we have. Well, this is actually a discussion that they're currently in talks to have at UFC 235. On top of that, we're also going to be discussing another fight that was just recently announced for UFC 235. That is Kamaru Usman taking on the champion of the welterweight division, Tyron Woodley. So that's something else. That's going to be the 2nd round. As for the 3rd round, I'm going to talk about the finale, the finals of the Bellator Heavyweight Grand Prix, which features Fedor Emelianenko taking on the light heavyweight champion of the world, Ryan Bader. So we've got some topics we're going to discuss. It's not a fully loaded deck like normal since we don't got any fights, but we're just going to talk a little bit about some of the matchups that were recently announced and just how I feel about these recently announced matchups, and a little bit as to why they were probably announced, these recently announced matchups. So, with that all said, welcome to 3 rounds with Jay. Welcome to an all-new episode. Let's kick things off. Let's get straight to round number 1. Round 1. What are we talking about? Jon Jones taking on Anthony Smith. This was recently announced by Ariel Helwani, MMA Junkie, and some other major news organizations, some other major mixed martial arts organizations, should I rephrase that, media members have put this out there that they are in talks. The UFC is currently in talks. The UFC is currently hoping to put Jon Jones and Anthony Smith together on UFC's event in March 235, I think it is at this point. The only holdup, the only thing stopping it from becoming official and confirmed is the fact that Jon Jones has got to go to a Nevada hearing in order to get re-licensed to compete in Nevada. As of right now, he has yet to be licensed, which was the whole hoopla that occurred with the UFC 232 event as to why he was moved to California, due to the fact that the Nevada Commission found some weird shit in his body. In other words, it was a big thing that people were talking about, the picogram of the... Listen, the guy fucking cheated twice, got caught twice. The 3rd time around, maybe he was trying to play clean, but the drug popped up. Let's just leave it at that. Let's call it what it is. You can only get caught so many times and be accused of cheater until you gotta start looking at the guy and assuming that he's probably a cheater, right? And I don't want to get back on this discussion about him cheating or whether he didn't cheat or not, but look, you failed one drug test, you said it wasn't your fault. Okay, we give you the benefit of the doubt. You fail a 2nd drug test, you say you don't know how it got in there again. Look, you ever hear the story about the boy who cried wolf? I don't believe you, buddy. You fail a third time for having a picogram or an Instagram or a fucking Pikachu in your system, and now all of a sudden you don't know where it came from. Everyone's saying it was there from before, and it's been a year and a half now that it's still in your system. Look, I don't know whether you cheated the third time or not, but the other 2 times, I'm not going to give you a pass on that one. The third time, maybe you are correct. I'm not a scientist. We all know that. I ain't wearing no fucking lab coat. So maybe he did actually fail it. That is actually from the previous test. It's still in his system and it hasn't gotten out. But anyways, I don't give a shit about that. He's still got a hearing to go to, which is the 19th of January, where he's hoping to get himself licensed. If he gets licensed, it's a GOAT. That's your main event. It's Anthony Smith taking on Jon Jones. Now, is this the right matchup to make? Remember, there was a discussion ongoing, and I even brought this up, that the forces that be, the powers that be, would rather have Daniel Cormier taking on Jon Jones, which, from a financial standpoint, that makes the most sense at this point. Jon Jones, Daniel Cormier fight for the third time. You've got the heavyweight champion taking on the returning and reclaimed light heavyweight champion in Jon Jones. This is a matchup that I feel like if it were to take place, it should take place at 205. But that's not the matchup we're discussing right now. We're discussing Anthony Smith and Jon Jones. Look, this matchup on paper is a good matchup for fight fans. On the outside, if you're not a hardcore fight fan, a guy like Anthony Smith may not be anyone to write home about or someone to get too excited about either. Anthony Smith is a good fighter, but the thing to keep in mind is that Anthony Smith just recently had a hard time competing against Volkan Ozdemir. He was almost stopped in that fight. He won that fight by submission. He survived. That's what we can call it. He survived and showed a ton of heart when most people would have crumbled and lost. What Anthony Smith managed to do in that fight was pull off an upset, something completely shocking, and it had everyone who watched it in disbelief at the fact that he came back and won. Look, a guy like Jon Jones, who has probably never lost a single round in his career outside of the Alexander Gustafsson fight, and that is the first one I'm talking about, it's gonna be a little tough for anyone on the outside as a casual fan or a hardcore fan to really get behind Anthony Smith and see him as a threat to Jon Jones. Hell, the heavyweight champion of the world, Daniel Cormier, was not even able to pose much of a threat to Jon Jones. He decisively beat him by decision the first fight, and he knocked him out in the second fight, which is the fight he failed the drug test and ended up being suspended for. But regardless, you take that drug test out, he did knock him out. The drugs didn't make him high kick Daniel Cormier in the face. It was a skill and the technique that managed to get him to high kick Daniel Cormier in the head and to put him out. And you want to put up a guy against Anthony Smith who's got some fantastic hands and has a decent ground game. And that's where the problem is. You see, Volkan Ozdemir was able to control Anthony Smith when he took him to the ground. But once Volkan got hit with the big shots and started to gas and tire is where Anthony Smith started to excel in the fight. Now you're taking a guy like Jon Jones who doesn't really get tired. Sure, he didn't look 100% in his last fight. He was coming off a year and a half of being on the shelf. He had some ring rust to get off his chest, but he still finished the fight and he still looked pretty good doing so. To put it mildly, Jon Jones at the percentage that we saw him at, which we'll probably say was about 65% of the Jon Jones that we're used to seeing. And that's still a high percentage. The 65% Jon Jones taking on an Anthony Smith that I saw against Volkan Ozdemir will always beat 100 out of 100, beat Volkan Ozdemir. It's just the skill level and the technique level and the fact that Volkan's ground game is okay, but not that great. See, Jon Jones is a fantastic wrestler. This guy's elite level. He took down the Olympian and Daniel Cormier. He took down Gustafsson and he managed to finish him on the ground. He submitted the likes of Vitor Belfort, Rampage Jackson. The list can go on. And Lyoto Machida, these are no slouches. He beat them in their prime on top of it. And Anthony Smith is in his prime. He's still young. He's still got a lot to claim. Anthony Smith is also a guy who early last year was just trying to come off. He was 1-1 in the UFC. And since then, he's gone on to have about 2 to 3 victories and is now in title contention against Jon Jones. This is a huge jump for Anthony Smith. He beat Volkan Ozdemir before. He had maybe an easy or decent fight. Look, he beat Shogun Rua prior to that. And I'm not, once again, putting down Shogun Rua, but he's past his prime. This guy somehow has managed to squeak out victories in almost all his fights, or even pull off a knockout, which is still astonishing. It just goes to show you how tough Shogun is. But when you're fighting Shogun, it's not something that I'm gonna be like, oh shit, this guy deserves the next title shot. Like, take the example BJ Penn. He lost his last fight. I'm not clowning for the guy who defeated him to suddenly get up in the division and start demanding title shots. You beat a guy who's past his prime by this point. So Jon Jones and Anthony Smith, financially, on paper, on pay-per-view, it won't bring the right attraction that a Daniel Cormier fight would bring, or someone of a higher name value. What it does is it poses a new opportunity and a new threat for Jon Jones. He's going to be competing against a guy who's hungry and who's looking to make a claim for that championship belt. Jones has been the champion, however you look at it, for the last several years, if you ignore the fact he's been suspended. But every time there's been a light heavyweight championship fight, it's either been Jon Jones or Daniel Cormier who's headlined these events. And that's just the simple truth. Until Jon Jones decides to retire or get in trouble again or get injured on the way to the ring, I just don't see how anyone can defeat him. I'm looking forward to this matchup simply because, like I said, it poses some interesting threats. Anthony Smith poses some interesting obstacles for Jon Jones, and at the same time, it's a fresh matchup that we've yet to see, and it's something that's going to be interesting to see if Jon Jones comes back at 100%, or will we see, or was it Jon Jones that took on Alexander Gustafsson, the new Jon Jones of 2019? Is this the guy who we're going to see from now on? And if that's the case, he looked pretty slow. And if that's the Jon Jones, then there might be a slight chance that Anthony Smith can pull off this incredible upset. That's round one. Let's jump straight into round number two, ladies and gentlemen. Let's do it.